So I often say here that we take ourselves to be the personality, who we take ourselves to be. You know, I talk about it that way. See, when you're taking yourself to be who you're not, if I say to you, who you're taking yourself to be is the personality, right? That's not how it occurs to you. You're not aware that you're taking yourself to be the personality. That's not how it occurs to you. The way it occurs to you is you're just being who you are. It's not even in the mix that I'm taking myself to be something that I'm not. That's why in these classes we can talk about it that way, and during the time we're talking about it, you can look and see that you are taking yourself to be something that you're not, right? But that, as soon as you leave here and go outside, you'll fall right into being who you were before, right? So this is the heart of the matter. This is the thing that I really want you to focus on, because this class is about your waking up, is it not? Yeah, it's a meditation class, but meditation is a way of relaxing the physical body and calming the mind, right? So all that static can be out of your way, and you can see the obvious. You can see the obvious. But even though the static is out of your way and you can see the obvious, it still requires some pointing to be done. Yeah, because if I didn't point to it, if somebody didn't point to it, it would take you a while to come up with it. You could come up with it on your own, people do, but it would take you a while. Well, why spend all that time coming up with it if you can have somebody that can say, look here, look here, pay attention here. So how many of you are familiar with the story? It's often told in spiritual teaching, the story of the lion and the lamb. So it's an old story, and it's useful in regard to what I was just saying, right? And the story goes like this. There was a lion, a baby lion, and the baby lion's mother died. So the baby was abandoned. Right? So the baby lion didn't know where to go and what to do, and the baby lion sees a group of sheep. What do you call a group of sheep? A herd? Flock of sheep? Okay. So the baby lion sees sheep, and so the baby goes to the sheep, and the sheep start to run away because they think the lion's coming to eat them, right? But then as the lion catches up to the sheep, he doesn't attack anybody, he just keeps running with them. So they figured, he's a crazy lion, right? So they just accepted him, and he started living among the sheep, right? Behaving like the sheep, learning how to be a sheep like the sheep. And then at one point, a lion comes that's hungry and starts chasing the sheep to get food. And this lion sees another lion running with the sheep. So he says, oh, I'll just join with him. We'll both hunt these sheep. So as this lion goes to join with the other lion, he notices that this lion is running away from him. Right? And so he tackles the lion, gets the lion down, and the lion's saying, don't eat me, don't eat me. And he grabs the lion, and he pulls the lion over to a lake, and he pulls the lion's head over the lake and shows him, you're a lion, like me. He showed him, you're a lion. So the lion sees that he's a lion, right? But here's where the gist comes in, right? Because the lion seeing that he's a lion is the same as when you're in this class and I point to who you really are, right? You're seeing what you really are instead of who you took yourself to be. He took himself to be a sheep when he was really a lion, right? Yeah. So this is one of Paul's favorite stories. And at the end of the story, it says, by seeing he's not a sheep, he realizes he's a lion. He's always been a lion. By hearing about a lion as the sheep, the only thing he can do is to try and become like a lion, which only reinforces it that he's a sheep. Do you get it? He takes himself to be a sheep, and then he discovers he's really a lion. But he discovers it as a sheep. So the only way that can occur to him is, oh, I can become a lion. That's where you are. That's where you are, Whenever you're saying, oh, I hear this all the time, not from just you people, but from other people I deal with. Oh, I understand what you're saying. I get it. I get who I really am, right? Yeah, but you're getting who you really are as the person. And when you get who you really are as a person, you try and become it, don't you? That's what you will do. You will try it, because that's the only thing that you can see as possible, is to try and become it, right? And while you're trying to become it, just like while the lion who took himself to be a sheep is trying to become a lion, he was always a lion when he thought he was a sheep. He was never a sheep. Okay? In the same way, you were always what you really are. You were never who you took yourself to be. It was never true. So it's not a real place. It's not a real place that you can start from to become anything, because you always were what you are, right? So the practice then becomes paying attention in such a way that you can continually notice what you're not. And when you're noticing what you're not, you're noticing a thought activity. And when you're noticing the thought activity and the feelings, the automatic experience you're having is, these feelings are happening to me. These thoughts are my thoughts, right? That's the sheep. That's the sheep. You see, that can't go anywhere. You can't pay attention to what you are from what you're not, because there is no what you're not. And when you think you're paying attention to what you are from what you're not, you're being what you are, thinking that you're not that.
Sounds crazy, but it's true. Huh?
There's no way to get around it unless you're...
There's nothing to get around. You see, that was a sheep talking. There's nothing to get around.
Unless you're enlightened or aware, you're the personality.
As a sheep. Unless you're an enlightened sheep, unless you're an enlightened person, you think you're the person. Unless you're an enlightened person, you think you're the person. But if you're an enlightened person, you know that you're not the person. But if you continue to be a person trying to be enlightened, that's not enlightenment.
Yeah.
See, if you slow down, right, it sounds like double talk, right? But if you slow down, it's not double talk. It's not double talk. It sounds like double talk because you're listening as a sheep. You're listening to what I'm saying as a person. And you're hearing it as a person. If you hear it as a person, the only possibility for you as a person is to become what you already are. And you can't become what you already are, because you already are what you already are. In the same way, as long as you're in the identity as a person, you could say, in the identity as a person, don't certain things start to make sense? Yeah, to you as a person, but that's not going to make any difference. You'll just be a spiritual person. But do you get it? See, this is something that, I'm trying to point to where the hinge, I'm trying to point to the hinge. I'm trying to point to where this is actually happening all the time for you, right? And you can't practice your way out of it. That would be a sheep trying to become a lion. You can't practice your way out of it, right? The only time you can be what you are is now. It's not going to happen some other time. It can't happen some other time, because what you are doesn't exist any other time but now. So if, as a person, you're planning on becoming a self, as a person you're planning on becoming down the road, I'm going to keep meditating, going to read more books, going to go to a retreat. I'll establish myself. I'll establish myself as the awareness, because I'll behave so much like I am the awareness that I'll be the awareness. No, you won't. You'll be a person pretending you're the awareness, and it won't make any difference, because you'll still get upset and you'll still be stupid. And your life won't work. Your life won't work, right? That's why it's so important to have an upset meter playing all the time. You should create, a meter that, these meters that have the thing that goes up, right? You should create an imaginary meter for yourself, right? And keep yourself aware of the meter at all times, so that when something you encounter in the world causes you to have a reaction, you can watch the meter. Or sometimes I imagine it to be a sound. Sometimes when I'm talking to my wife and I get triggered, in my head I hear whoop, That's the anger coming up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I don't see that, if I don't hear that, if I don't have a trick and a mechanism to notice it, right, I'll identify with it. As soon as I identify with it, the game's over. Even if I know what I'm doing, I can't stop myself. Even if I know what I'm doing, I will still have this strong impulse, this compulsion to say what I need to say, right, to make sure she understands who's the boss. Where is that going to go? You know, that will never end. That's why the only thing that's in store for anybody that takes himself to be a personality is conflict. Conflict with other people that take themselves to be a personality, right? Because once you're in the form of a personality, you're in competition, right? Because in the form of a personality, there's good people and bad people, rich people and poor people, you know, intelligent people and stupid people, right? So you don't want to be on the negative side of that, right? So you got to do the competition. You got to get out there and make that money, and you got to get out there and go to college and learn to talk like you're smart so you can impress people, you know. You can be attractive, right? You can look good. You won't be stupid. Nobody wants to be stupid, right? That becomes your life. Your life becomes a story that you're in, and you're trying to control the way the story goes, right? It's a story that you're in. And the story that you're in is a story that is very important because the story involves how you're going to be seen. You know, you want to be seen as the lion, not the lamb, even though you're the lamb. You see what I'm saying? It's a pretense. That's what pretentiousness is. You're pretending to be something that you're not because of why? Because it'll look good. It'll look good. How much value does that really have? You know, because you know the truth. You know the truth. That's why people who have such big fronts have such big backs. You know, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. You know, that's why people that have such big pretenses, have such big images, right, fall so hard. You know, like movie stars, right? You know, they fall hard because they know that the image is not real. And they're afraid of the truth about themselves. Not only is the image not real, but who I really am. If anybody found that out, I wouldn't be famous anymore. Of course, I mean, if you're practicing being, if you're a sheep and you're practicing being like a lion, you'll get the results of a lion. You see what I'm saying? But it's not but you're still not experiencing the truth of yourself, and that's where well-being comes from. It doesn't come from good, you know, yeah, doing good deeds is good, right? And it makes you feel good, right? It makes you feel good because when you do good deeds and you're being selfless, then you're being the way you really are, which is selfless. You have no self. Well, it doesn't really take you away from yourself because there is no self there. All it does is allow you to experience what's already true, that there is no self there. And when there's no self there, there's a relief. There's nobody to worry about. There's nobody that anything can happen to. You know? The awake experience is an experience in which what there is what's happening. That's all. What there is what's happening. That's all. It's not happening to me anymore. If it's not happening to me anymore, the suffering's over. Right? But you've been so thoroughly indoctrinated because you've been running with the sheep. See, you've been running with the sheep. This is the sheep world out here. This is the personality world, right? So if you're going to wake up, one of the things you have to contend with is you have to continue to operate with crazy people. And when you're operating with the crazy people, you have to be kind of crazy so you can fit in, right, with them. But you have to know the truth. You have to know you're just acting crazy so you can fit in with these crazy people and do business. But it doesn't interfere with your well-being because you know that you're not that. You know that you're not that. And the only way you're going to know that you're not that is by practicing paying attention to what you're not.
So you have to act like the sheep.
What do you mean you have to act like the sheep?
Fit in with everybody else.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you can act like the sheep knowing you're not the sheep. But if you act like the sheep because you're being the sheep, that's a different story. So that's the trick. The trick is to fit in. The trick is to fit in with humanity, to fit in with the other people, and see, it's not just to fit in because when you're awake and you're aware, right, you know who they are even though they don't. Okay, so you have a little bit of an edge there, right? Yeah, so you know who they are even though they don't. So if they want to pick a fight with you, you can easily stay out of trouble because you know who's picking a fight with you isn't who they really are. Yeah? So you have space. You have space for people to behave the way they're behaving, knowing the truth about who they are and knowing the truth about who you are. But this has got to be a practice. And if you get this thing that I talked about, this sheep and the lion story, it's about you. You know, it's not. If you hear that and the way you hear that is, oh yeah, I get it. I can see that. You're hearing it as a sheep. I'm telling you, you're hearing it. You can't hear it any other way. You can't hear it any other. You can't get out of it. You can't get out of being the sheep. You can't get out of being the sheep because you've been raised. See, it's a little different than the story in a sense because from the very beginning you were being a sheep. From the very beginning you were being a personality, right? So you are completely brainwashed about your identity. Completely brainwashed about your identity. And be clear. Let yourself be clear that the source of what doesn't work in your life is your identity. It's your identity. That's why conventional psychotherapy doesn't work very effectively because it's not dealing with the identity. It's dealing with the thought process of the identity or the emotions of the identity, trying to clean that up and fix that up, right? But it won't work. It'll always go back and turn into shit again because the identity hasn't been affected. And as long as you take yourself to be a person, you're going to end up protecting yourself, defending yourself, being aggressive, withdrawing, being depressed, being anxious. That goes along with it. It goes along with it, right? So, any other questions? Any sheep questions? The thing about this you want to be clear about is because you see that as a person you may hear this story and say, oh, I get it, I'm not going to be the sheep. You can't. You can't. You can't get out of being the sheep. You can't get out of being the personality. The thing that makes the difference is you will continue to be the personality, but you'll know you're being the personality and that's not what you really are. That's the whole difference right there. But knowing that you're not the personality requires moment-to-moment practice. Otherwise, you'll fall into the default state, start behaving like a personality, and start experiencing what that gives you, which is an unworkable reality, a dysfunctional life, a dysfunctional experience. An experience in which you're trying to get your shit together all the time. Aren't you? Yeah. Trying to get your shit together all the time because the evidence, the feedback you keep getting is that you're crazy. Right? You're crazy, so you're going to try and do your best to act sane. You try to do your best to act sane, and then something upsets you, and you act crazy again. Damn it! Yeah. Damn it! I thought I was going to be the lion. Yeah. You can't get out of it. You can't get out of it. There's no way out of it, right? That's the point. It is awareness. You've always been a lion. You've always been the awareness. Even when you take yourself to be a personality, you're the awareness taking itself to be a personality. It did that in the beginning so it could play the game of life, right? But that's not the end of the story. It's not, see, you know, it's a very interesting thing to take under consideration, right? We live in our time as if our time is the most advanced, don't we? How about if our time is not advanced at all? Because we're only looking at it as more advanced in terms of technical stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But how advanced are we as a species? Not very. Not very. So we always look at it like, oh, we're advanced. No, we're not advanced, right? This is still the beginning. This is still the beginning. If human beings are going to evolve and come more into the recognition and the realization of their true nature, which would make sense, that would complete the story, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, you were a baby, you were what you really were, then you took on the personality, right? And you were living as a personality, and as you were living as a personality, you were experiencing it to be less and less workable until it became clear it wasn't working, right? So you started to seek an answer to that. You started to seek a relief from that suffering, right? And if you come across these teachings and practices, right, then you are exposing yourself to an evolutionary reality, which is the next step for you as a human being to move on and fulfill on your potential to complete the process. The completed process means I am a personality. I'm being a personality knowing what I am is awareness. Now you have the baby and the personality working together, right? So that would complete the process. Right? So you've been selected to be the head of the evolutionary process because you're here, right? And it's an interesting possibility because on the one hand, you've been selected to become the leading edge of the evolutionary personality, and you had nothing to do with that selection, right? But here you find yourself in an interesting situation. What if if your continued evolution has to involve your being willing to recognize your true nature? That's part of the process. Not only willing to recognize your true nature, but practicing experiencing yourself that way, right? And if you succeed in that, you will be leading humanity in the future. You'll be the lead of humanity. You'll be the model for what it is to be what you actually are. Like the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a model for being the truth, for being what you actually are, right? So if we're in the very beginning of the process, don't take it, don't worry about it. Don't take it to heart, right? Understand that you're just blessed and you have good fortune, that you're being exposed to this possibility. And you can get that you're the lion, right? You can get that you're the lion and get it not as the lamb. By practicing being aware of what you're not, right? Yeah. By practicing being aware of what you're not, every time you practice being aware of what you're not, you're experiencing what you are. That's the place from which you see what you're not. But it's got to be a consistent process because the moment you stop, the default state comes in. And you're back in the default state. And if your default state comes in and you're back in the default state, and then you say, oh shit, this is useless, this is hopeless, this is never going to work, I might as well just give up and do drugs. And a lot of people do.
Yeah, we do.
A lot of people do. Doing prescription drugs, illegal drugs, alcohol, television, sex, pornography, Part of our technological world is there's many, many options in order to distract yourself from your misery. Yeah. Yeah. So you live in an altered state. You live in an altered state. You have to change your brain chemistry so you're not miserable. But that's not the same as the natural state. It's just not the same as the natural state. The lamb can never experience being a lion without being a lion. You can't be a lamb trying to be a lion, or you can't be a lamb. You can't be a personality trying to be a spiritual person. You can't be a personality trying to be the awareness. You have to see the ridiculousness of this. Being a person when you hear about the truth, being a person trying to realize this truth, right? You are doing that, by the way. Being a person trying to realize this truth so you can experience the experience of being what you are, because that's fulfilling, that's satisfying, that's peace of mind. That's what happiness is all about, right? But as long as that's the equation, that you're being a person trying to realize your true nature, while you're doing that, you are your true nature. That's how easy it is. It's too easy. That's the problem. It's just too easy. And when we talk about these things like, I often quote the Advaita Vedanta statement, Satchidananda, right? Existence, consciousness, bliss. The word bliss is a little offsetting, right? Because it's very important to understand what we mean by happiness. What we mean by happiness, the personality might take what we mean by happiness to be, oh, I'm happy all the time. I'm just happy all the time. I'm gleeful. I'm joyful. I'm smiling. I'm happy all the time, right? No, that's not what we mean by happiness. It's inevitable that you are going to have highs and lows. It's inevitable that you are going to have times when you are experiencing being happy the way we ordinarily talk about happiness, and times when you're not happy the way we ordinarily talk about happiness, right? But the happiness that's talked about in the Advaita Vedanta, right, Satchidananda, that happiness is the happiness that's a function of the first thing that was said, existence. The happiness that we're talking about here is an existential experience. It's the experience of being happy because you exist. How many people are experiencing that? How many people are experiencing being happy because they exist? Yeah, you know, I didn't ask to be here type of shit, right? So if you can get to the experience of what it's like to be the existence itself, not to be the form it's in, you see the difference? To be existence itself, then you appreciate the fact that you're here, and that's why you're happy. I'm happy because I exist. And in that existence, there's going to be happiness and unhappiness in that existence, right? It's kind of like if I'm an actor and I'm playing a character in a movie, right? The character may have periods of happiness and unhappiness and depression and anxiety and anger and fear. The character may have all that, right? But the actor's happy the whole time.
Yeah, right.
You get it? The actor's happy the whole time because they get to play the character. And they're having fun playing the character because they know the character is just the character. It's not what I really am. That's exactly the way it is. It's exactly the way it is. And if you experience this truth about happiness because you exist, right, then on your deathbed you'll be happy. Then if you have difficulties in this life, the difficulties will be difficult and you'll be happy at the same time. Yeah, you may have difficulties in your life where you have to make changes and you have to suffer through the things that go along with having a body, but you'll be happy the whole time. Why? Because you exist, because you're here. This is something that when you're on your deathbed, everybody will usually get this, right? But it's a little too late.
Yeah.
You know, when you're about to die, you realize the only thing that really mattered was something I overlooked. The only thing that really mattered was the fact that I was here. But instead of experiencing being here, I was worried about whether I'm winning the game here. And so I couldn't enjoy being here because I'm too involved in the game that's getting played. And now it's over and it's too late. So die now. Die now. Let the personality die. It's not real. It's not real. You can let it die. All you have to do to let it die is get that it doesn't exist. Boom, it's gone. Like that. But then you have to practice paying attention to the fact that it'll keep reappearing in your thinking. It'll keep reappearing in your thinking and your emotions and the stories that are being told about you in your life. That's why you have to keep practicing noticing what you're not. Every time you do that, you're noticing it from what you are. And you can't do it the other way. You see, that's the sheep trying to be the lion, doing it the other way, thinking that as what you're not, you can notice what you are. As what you're not, you can notice what you are. That's what you're attempting to do when you're being the personality. You're attempting as what you're not to notice what you are. And while you're attempting to notice what you are as what you're not, you are what you are thinking that you're not that. It's worth slowing down and looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you don't slow it down, it's happening so fast you don't see it. You don't see it. And you just end up back in this shit. You get back in the shit again, back in the personality again. So it's a practice. Your life is a practice. If your life isn't a practice, then your life is shit. Because if it's not a practice, then you are literally hypnotized. You're hypnotized to be something that you're not. And what you think you are can never be happy, never be satisfied, never be peaceful. So that's why they talk about this. That's why when Paul Hederman talks, you know, he says, I'm serving you a subpoena. Are you going to answer the subpoena? Or if you listen to Mooji, he says, I'm inviting you, an invitation to freedom. Are you going to take the invitation? It's not going to happen by itself. This is something that you have to recognize the cost of. You have to recognize what it cost you to be crazy. You have to recognize what it cost you to think you're something that you're not. And that has to be important enough to you to start practicing paying attention. So you don't keep doing it. So you can start to practice seeing what you're not from what you are. And if you do that, you'll start to experience a relief, what Paul Hederman calls traveling lighter. Just traveling lighter, having an easier time, being able to go with the flow, you know, not being so worried about things that aren't happening. Most of the thinking that we do is about what's not happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about what's not happening, what is happening is going by without your experiencing it. That's called your life. You're missing your life. Yeah, because you're paying attention to what you imagine instead of what's real. All right, I'm done.